Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Shaw Local's Bears Insider Podcast. I am Chicago Bears reporter Michael Dwojak here with the Northwest Herald's Joe Aguilar as we're joining you on Monday morning, a day after a Bears victory. The Bears beat the Dallas Cowboys 31-14 on Sunday at the Lakefront. A big win for the Bears, and it kind of happened in an unexpected way. A big performance from the offense that picking up a bunch of stops, Joe. Kind of what you expected heading into the season, and that Bears team finally showed up on Sunday.
Michael, I never lost faith. Boy, I believed in this team from the get-go, which is not the case. No, it was nice to see a win at Soldier Field. It had been almost a year since they won a home game, for crying out loud. And we figured it would be an offensive shootout. And I'm just surprised the Bears held them to 14. But, it started early with that strip takeaway from Tyreek Stevenson. We'll get into him later because what a game he had. But because that first, the first two plays, like, here we go again. They just gashing the Bears front seven. And it turned around quickly. And I think we both pick Caleb as our player of the game going in, or maybe you had Colston Loveland, but we figured Caleb would have a big game, and he certainly did.
He definitely did, and it was a big response for the Bears in general, right? Ben Johnson, 2 weeks into the season was not happy, and he challenged his team. He said that the practice habits were bad, that nothing was looking good, and the team took that to heart. They responded to his challenge, and that's really important to see, right? Like it's good to see that they took that to heart and came out with a dominant performance, the way they were able to, move the ball down the field mostly on Sunday, and then defensively to come up with 4 turnovers, 3 interceptions. That's a big response from a team that started the season 0-2 and was really staring at an 0-3 start to the year. If you're joining us on the live stream, thanks so much for joining us. Make sure you get your comments in there. Any thoughts from a big Bears win? If you are here, make sure you give us a like. That's the best way to support us. Help us grow our podcast and our live stream. And if you're listening on the podcast and you want to be part of the conversation, make sure you're checking out our social medias. We usually post when we're going to be talking live, and we try to do every Monday morning after a Sunday game and every Friday morning before a Sunday game as well. So a lot of stuff to break down. But yeah, Joe, I agree. I think it's a big response for the Bears. I think it's a big, I don't have to tell you that 0-3 would be a bad start to the year. We would be having a very bad different conversation. But I think that this win just shows you that this is a week-to-week league, right? Like this Bears team did not look like the Bears team we saw in the first 2 weeks, and you saw that around the league. Green Bay loses, and all these kind of crazy last-minute wins and losses that happen in that noon window. But it's a week-to-week league, and that's why we're all so hooked to the NFL, where we just don't know what we're going to get each and every week.
Oh, absolutely. The Green Bay game, I would have bet the mortgage, everything on the Packers beating Cleveland yesterday, right? But, it also shows you that as much as we want to see perfection, if you're a Bears fan, from the offense, from the defense, from the coaching staff to the GM, there are a lot of bad to mediocre football teams in the league. There are only so many Bills and Ravens and Chiefs teams in this league. So Dallas, they're not good. They're not good. We've seen that defense before. We saw, it's Matt Eberflus's defense. That zone, you're going to get picked apart, and they did. And I got to tell you, we knew, watching the game, Caleb didn't get sacked the whole game. I didn't realize that's the first time in his career he didn't get sacked.
Yeah.
It's nice not to face Micah Parsons when you're playing the Cowboys. That helps. But it was, playing at home, you'd think the home crowd should energize you. It should be easier for your offense with the cadence and everything. But, again, they hadn't won at home in almost a year. So it was much needed, and they really shined. I got to tell you, Michael, we do the column I do for Shaw with the 3 things that didn't work. Last week against the Lions, I had about 10 I could have chosen from. I had trouble coming up with the third. That's how good they were in every aspect. Special teams actually wasn't much of a factor at all because the defense was taking the ball away, bending but not breaking, and the offense was very efficient.
It was very efficient, and I think the biggest thing is you saw. Listen, you saw Caleb Williams look like the quarterback that you hoped he could become right under Ben Johnson. He was efficient. He looked confident in the pocket. He was going through his progressions. Was it perfect? No, he missed some throws. But I've come to see, even watching some of the best quarterbacks, it just kind of happens. And I'm not trying to explain away some of those misses. Like he airmailed a couple throws. He was just off. But for the most part, he was an effective thrower. He looked confident in the pocket. He was going through his progressions. He had some nice passes, and that's got to have you feel like that. That's the biggest part of the season, right? Is whether Caleb can be that star for you and at the center of attention or the center of, your offensive success. And he was. He threw four touchdown passes. He had no interceptions. He threw for 298. He completed 67.9% of his passes. I think, if they maybe didn't go on, and we'll talk about this later, that 19-play drive where they basically just ran out the entire third quarter, maybe some of those passing numbers would have been a little bit higher, and he could have touched those career numbers. But you didn't need him to throw for 400 yards. It became clear that he was just running the offense effectively, and that's what you've been looking for through 2 games into the season, and you finally saw that on Sunday.
Yeah, you didn't need him to throw for 400 because he was on pace to throw 450 at halftime. You had like 236 or whatever it was in the first half. You knew that was going to, assuming they kept the lead, he wasn't going to have to do that. But you're right. He missed some throws. He missed the first throw of the game. We said, they're going to try to make Colston Loveland a factor in this game. And I think it was him. He targeted on the first throw, and I thought the throw was off. It was probably, Colston was open on that play, but we don't even think about that play really when you think about the game in the whole, because he responded so well. But certainly, and the deep balls too, certainly the flea flicker play, but some deep throws downfield, which we hadn't seen a lot. Certainly the first two weeks, especially against Minnesota, was dinking and diming and, down the field. It's like, can we throw the ball down the field? We never saw that last couple years or so. So it was nice to see some deep balls, catches. And I got to tell you, even on that Luther Burden catch, the flea flicker, there are receivers who've been on this team in the past who dropped that. I know he was wide open, but it still had to go up and catch it. You're tight roping the sideline there, guys. So again, the talent is better at the receiving spots, including the tight ends, and it was all on display yesterday.
All right. Every week we like to do our 3 winners and 3 losers when we recap a game. Obviously, there'll be a lot of winners in this week. If you guys have any winners or losers that you guys want to chime in the chat, make sure you check them out. But Joe, why don't you get us started? Who is your first winner from Sunday's game?
Well, it's the obvious one. We just talked about it. It was Caleb Williams. Best game probably of his career, right? I mean, I know he had some more, games last year where he threw for more yardage, but that was. Again, he missed some throws, but that was really a complete game effort. The passer rating was 142.6, I think, career best.
Yeah, 142.6.
Right. And I just liked pretty much everything he did there. And I thought we always talk about the processing, getting the team organized on the line of scrimmage. He just looked more poised, no sacks, didn't throw an interception again. Got one deflected that it almost was, but every team has those too. So I thought he was outstanding, and I honestly think there's more to come from him. I don't think that's going to be, his best game of the season. It might be when all is said and done, but I still think he's got more there.
I think he did what he needed to do, right? We went into this game saying that this is probably going to be a shootout, right? Like we thought that this was going to be a shootout. We saw what the Cowboys were able to do last week, and it's just. You needed him to put up a performance like this, and that's exactly what he did. He looked efficient. He looked good. He looked like he was, making his reads the right way. He was making the simple passes. He was making the adjustments. He was effectively running the offense. Everyone knew what was going on. There were no pre-snap penalties in this game either,
right.
Which was big. Obviously, there was no setbacks, and like you mentioned earlier, no sacks. I mean, it was just he ran the offense really well against the defense that he knew really well, and that, it just seemed like the game plan was perfect for it, and he ran it really well. And that hasn't always been the case, right? Like you've seen Caleb sometimes maybe for lack of a better term, play down to his opponent, or maybe, not put up the performance as much as he needs to be. And so I think that's an encouraging step. Obviously he wasn't taking on the Minnesota defense. He wasn't taking on Detroit's defense, right? Like you saw how he did in the first 2 weeks of the season, but he did make it look good against a struggling defense, a defense that he knew well. And that's exactly what you need to do. And to see, and I think that's why it's such a big step for Caleb in his development under Ben Johnson this year.
Yeah, and people keep saying, it was Dallas's defense. They're bad. Well, the Bears are bad. And the Bears are still bad until they prove otherwise. And not just, one game's not going to erase that. So, he did what he should do. It's like any sport when you beat a bad team. Well, they should have beat them. Well, not everyone does. So you only play who's on your schedule. And no one's, saying, well, they played Minnesota. They're really good. So give the Bears a break. No, you expect them to win. You want to win. So they do what they had to do yesterday.
All right, I'll move on to my win, and that's kind of playing off of Caleb's, but it's Ben Johnson and his play scheming. I feel like you finally saw, you just saw why Ben Johnson was the top guy, right? Like you just saw in all senses of what he brings to this team. The scheming, the flea flicker was a perfectly called play at the time. The Dallas goes down the field and, they get a field goal to make it a 7-3 game. And then you catch him off guard. And that flea flicker just kind of ignited that offense, I feel like. It was kind of felt slow motion for a little bit when DeAndre Swift got bumped at the line. And then he kind of shot the ball at Caleb instead of passing the ball back to Caleb. But to call that play, I just love that play. That was just such a great moment to get Luther involved in, just him getting everyone involved. Like you had 4 different guys catch touchdowns, right? Like you were getting different playmakers involved. And that's what Bears fans have been asking for the first 2 weeks. Get your playmakers involved. Don't only focus on Rome. And, Ben even talked about how like he knew what the defense was for Matt Eberflus. He looked at Chicago's tape and he took advantage of that. And that's exactly why you hired him, right? Like he dissects the tape. He looks at all the different things that, the tendencies that a particular defense has, and he exploits them. And that's what you saw, right? Like you saw him, go after Colston Loveland down the middle of the field, like we talked about, that tight end special. He hit the out routes. He hit those short passes. He went for the long passes, and some of his he was able to create some routes where guys were wide open. I mean, both DJ Moore and Cole Kmet on their last 2 touchdowns were wide open in the end zone because of the scheming that Ben Johnson did. So that's a big win for me because I think we saw a little bit of it in the first 2 weeks, but I think that this was really a game where you're like, that's the Ben Johnson I remember from Detroit. It didn't look the same way. It obviously wasn't the same offense, but it was the same, kind of taking advantage of what the defense gives you and just exploiting it.
Yeah, no, I love it too. And I love that he's aggressive. I know some people don't like the fourth and goal from the 4 play. I like it. And that's the way he coached in Detroit. I think that's the way he's going to do it here. And sometimes it's going to backfire. But I just like his aggressive nature. And I love the 2-minute drive at the end of the first half. That was textbook. Even when they were like at midfield and it was about a minute on the clock, and we're used to thinking, okay, let's go, because they looked very patient, but they knew you don't want to score too early there. And I just thought, I love that. I love that a lot more than the 19-play drive. We can talk about that maybe later, but I just like his aggressive nature. We've seen that through 3 weeks, and he's going to get better as being a head coach too, as smart as he is and as creative he is. But great call there, I think, with you and Ben Johnson.
Yeah, I mean, and you saw what that meant. I'll just kind of lump it in with what he kind of meant to that team. I don't know if you've seen the video of him in the post game. Obviously giving the game balls and celebrating, and that I don't know if he, if for those who don't know, look it up on Bears social media. But they shared a video about breaking it down and Ben Johnson getting the game ball after his first win as an NFL coach, and Ben kind of goes through this chant that very clearly, I don't know whether this is like a life motto for him or something like that, but something about being, good, better, best, and having kind of like a call repeat. Like you can just see in that moment that those guys are bought in. Like those guys are into him. They bought into his mentality. They bought into everything that Ben Johnson is, and that's exactly what you wanted when you started the season, and that's what you wanted when you hired Ben Johnson. He's a gritty guy who is going to do whatever it takes to win and wants the best out of his players and wants the best out of his coaching staff and wants the best out of himself. So that was just a very, very cool moment to kind of watch him. And you kind of got an inside look into who Ben Johnson is as a play caller and as a coach. Joe, who is your second winner?
Well, gosh, there were so many to choose from, Michael. Imagine that. After last week, I couldn't come up with more than two. I had to go to the ball boy or kid. No, I'm going to go defense. I'm going to go Tyreek Stevenson, who's been getting a lot of love since yesterday, and deservedly so. Did we ever think Tyreek Stevenson would be one of the stars of the game? But man, oh man, with a secondary so banged up, and they were, showed some of that weakness yesterday. But he had the big strip fumble, on the first series of the game for Dallas's first series, and then two pass breakups, one in the red zone. Boy, oh boy, that's the guy who we saw potential 2 years ago, and then we know what happened last year with the failed Mary and all that stuff. But good for him, because they need it, especially if Jalen Johnson is going to be out for an extended period of time, maybe the whole season. We don't know, but they need corners who can play instead of just Band-Aid guys. And he looked like a professional cornerback yesterday. That first half, man, that's what you need. But so he was dialed in, and there's still a ceiling here for him. It's not like this is as good as he's going to get. He's just, he's a borderline guy. I think going into the game, I think he had the highest passer rating against for the corners. Like he was the worst in football. It was like almost perfection. So that was huge. And he's going up against Dak Prescott. And I know CeeDee Lamb got hurt early. Well, too bad. Jalen Johnson and Kyler Gordon were out for the Bears. So I'm not going to feel sorry for the Cowboys. But Tyreek Stevenson, way to go.
Yeah, I mean, that's the guy you expected, right? That's the guy that you kind of expected to have after you kind of drafted him in the second round a few years ago. Yeah. I know the Commanders game, everything about that last week. We don't need to rehash all of that, but the first 2 weeks didn't look good. I mean, the Lions bullied him last week. Like they got after him, they targeted him, and they took full advantage of him. And, I talked to Jaquan Brisker after the game, some of the guys after the game, and they talked about how, Tyreek kind of took that personally. Like he got into practice early. He came into the facility early. He came and worked hard to kind of get back to that level. And Tyreek was a menace. I mean, that play where he just comes out of nowhere, rips the ball out of Williams' hands, and stays in bounds to get the fumble. It's just an insane play. And it's a momentum booster, right? Like it's just such a crazy play that kind of gives your team a momentum because Dallas was moving the ball down the field. That was a 22-yard rush by Williams that was going deep into Bears territory, and Stevenson took away. And Stevenson finished with 2 pass disruptions. I know there was another one that he could have intercepted. I feel like he made a really good play on it. I forget it was in the second quarter, but he had a really good read on it and almost had it. Jaquan also almost had it on the bounce pad. He just looked he looked exactly like the corner you expected him to be, and that's a big response for him. Now it'll be interesting to see whether he'll be able to do that against the Raiders and obviously moving forward. But that's a big response from a big cornerstone guy, especially with Jalen Johnson out for the indefinite future. And we don't know how long Kyler Gordon is going to be out for either. Right. My second winner of the day is going to be just the situational stuff. I loved, it's ironic that it happened against, Matt Eberflus, and I don't want to play that too much. I don't know. Like, I feel like the guys have moved on. Everyone's kind of moved on from the Matt Eberflus era at this point. But that 2-minute drill at the end of the first half, that was just masterclass stuff. That was just outstanding. The Bears run off, 3 or 4 run plays, burn a minute off the clock, and then they get the pass game going. Then, you find Cole Kmet wide open in the end zone for a touchdown with like 25 seconds left, and you make it a 2-score game instead of a 3-point game, and that's huge. And I loved that 19-play drive in the third quarter because not only did you kind of establish the run and different guys involved in that play, but you burned 9 minutes and 54 seconds off the clock. You didn't let the Cowboys on the field for such a long time. And, the players talked after the game about how, that's grueling, man. That really makes you question stuff, and that makes you. Cole Kmet said it's an identity builder just to be able to go on a 19-play drive like that. That's hard work, just consistently, especially running the ball for 11 straight plays. And that was huge because that made it a 31-14 game with 1 quarter left. If you score earlier and it's 31-14, it's the mid third quarter. You still got a bunch of time that maybe you can play a little catch up, but with 1 quarter to go and that big of a deficit, you kind of have to rely on the pass game, and it really makes defending the Cowboys much easier in the fourth quarter because they're going to pass it. So that situational stuff was just perfect. I love that 2-minute drill. That was effectively done. You didn't give the Cowboys too much time at the end of the half to score, and you didn't let them double dip because they had the ball to start the second half. And then you just destroy them with that 19-play drive. I mean, I know that they still had a chance later on in the game, and Tremaine Edmonds got a big interception, but that really felt like a back-breaking drive for the Bears.
Well, what I liked about the 19-play drive was it kept Dallas's offense off the field because Dak was just kind of, even though they weren't getting the deep plays and the explosive plays, they were just going downfield, and again it becomes this race back and forth who can score again quicker. And so that's good because that defense, look, this is going to be the Bears defense probably for the rest of the year. Hope it gets better. They'll have their moments of good. They'll probably gonna have more moments of bad. That's just what it is. So it's good in that regard. It's good that they finished it, not with the field goal. But on the other hand, what I really didn't like about it, first of all, and they ran the ball, but it was running. It wasn't just like straight up the middle, pounding around. It was reverses. It was DJ Moore getting the carry. It was Luther Burden on a reverse. It was all this kind of gimmicky stuff because the running game, we'll get to that later, wasn't effective again. And honestly, like last time I saw a 19-play drive, I think it was about 15 years ago, Carmel Catholic playing at De La Salle. But that's high school option football,
Sure.
It's not the pros. I mean, Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes and the list. They don't have 19-play drives because they get you early. If you're a dominant football team, if you're a dominant offense, you don't need 19 plays to score. But the Bears, with the situation they're in, because they're not the Bills, they're not the Chiefs, they're not the Ravens, they've got to figure out maybe some other ways. If that was what Ben Johnson's thinking was, I'm sure you'd like to score every time you snap the ball. But if you can keep your defense off the field, maybe wear down Dallas's already bad defense a little more, okay, maybe that's where the Bears are right now. But when they're humming and they're a playoff caliber team, whenever that may be, whether it's later this year or next year or whenever, they won't be needing 19 plays to score.
Sure, and I agree with you. Obviously, you want to score with 2 or 3 plays. You would want to do the flea flicker all the time. But I do think it says a lot about this team just to be able to go on a drive and for Johnson to recognize.
Sure,
Johnson could. And he wasn't directly asked, did you specifically design a 13-play drive? I don't think he would have told you that he did because I don't think many coaches do design 20-play drives these days in the NFL. But I do think that he recognized, all right, the run game is working. Let's get a couple runarounds. Let's get a couple design runs for Caleb. And let's just keep this thing moving because this is working effectively right now and Dallas isn't on the field. And I agree. I think, they didn't have CeeDee Lamb, but Dallas was still moving the ball down the field effectively. Yeah. Like they were still doing a good job for how much the Bears were still, bending but not breaking. But yeah, I would agree. I think you would obviously love to have that, but that's Ben Johnson knowing what his situation is and what his team is at this point. And again, that's kind of, I feel like for him, that's just kind of, knowing your personnel and, putting them in the best position to succeed. All right, Joe, I know you've said you had a lot here. So who's your final winner? Who you're choosing as number 3?
Well, I'm going to go with Tremaine Edmonds because was that his best game as a Bear? I mean, we know the guy's good. I mean, he was a Pro Bowl player with Buffalo. I think he went twice to the Pro Bowl for Buffalo, but we really hadn't seen as much. I didn't think he was good last year. But yesterday, and I didn't realize until I saw the final stats, he had like 15 tackles. I don't know how many solos, 6, 7 solos. Then the 2 interceptions. One was kind of a gift by George Pickens right through his hands. It's funny, George Pickens makes the great one-handed stab, and then with 2 hands, he can't catch the ball. But Edmonds was there, made a nice athletic play to corral the ball and catch it because a lot of guys, what do they say about DBs? Even though he's a linebacker, that's why you play defensive back, because you can't catch, because that's why you couldn't play wide receiver. But he caught the ball, and then the interception in the end zone there at the end, when Dak and Dallas are a little desperate there and just trying to make a play, but he made it. So 2 interceptions. He was all over the field. Ben Johnson had even pointed him out when they had that little post-game huddle in the locker room by themselves there, about he was all over the field. And so that's good, because especially with TJ Edwards out, hopefully they get him back at some point soon. But we talk about it every week, you need defensive guys to start making some plays, and he's paid a lot of money. And that was a football game he had yesterday. So again, if you can get this out of Tyreek Stevenson and Tremaine Edmonds, not every game, but the majority of the time, the rest of the season, there is hope for the defense.
Yeah, you needed someone to step up, obviously with all the injuries that we've talked about, and Tremaine did. He was all over the field, getting those 15 tackles. He played the TJ Edwards role pretty well. Like, obviously TJ is always the guy I feel like who's at the ball at all times, but he did a great job. 15 combined tackles, like you mentioned, 6 solo tackles, 2 interceptions. I agree that second one was just kind of a gift, and I can't imagine what the Dallas radio is like today. Obviously, I think Dak is a really talented quarterback, and I think that obviously CeeDee Lamb, when you lose your top target, that's going to affect you. But some of those interceptions, I was kind of like, I don't know. Like, it was not great decision making on his part. But I know that you're kind of scrambling at that point. But yeah, I agree. You needed someone on this defense to step up, and Tremaine as your captain, as your guy that you kind of brought in a few years ago. One of the first signings that Ryan Poles made as a GM with the Bears. He's been a good captain. I think he had a good first year. Last year, he kind of fell into the background. You didn't really hear him too much, but it was good to hear his name a lot, and it was good to see him have a big performance like that. All right, Joe, my final one. There are a bunch of different guys, but I'm going to go with one of the big things I mentioned last week in my preview and in a preview podcast was getting the rookies involved. And Ben Johnson recognized that, and he talked about it, and that's exactly what he did. He went after Colston Loveland on that first pass. Caleb overthrew Loveland, but then he, on the second drive, he hit him for a 31-yard play up the middle. That was a good recovery from Colston, because he got hit earlier on that route. He got jammed up a little bit, and he recovered well to make that catch, to make a 31-yard catch, and that obviously led to the Rome Odunze touchdown. But and then obviously Luther Burden, you got him involved, right? Like, the flea flicker was amazing. That was great. And big confidence in him in order to be able to do that. But then, Luther caught a couple nice passes where he caught I think it was around a 20-yard pass or 15-yard pass that set up a touchdown later in the game. He had 101 receiving yards. He made the most of his targets. He had 3 targets. He had 3 catches. And obviously scored his first touchdown on that flea flicker. Kyle Monungai rushed for 16 yards on 6 carries. You just got the rookies involved, and that was big, right? And I think that's going to be really important for this offense to succeed, because we kept saying you got a bunch of different playmakers. Like, don't be stagnant. Don't focus in on one guy. And that's what you saw, right? Like, I think it was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 different guys were targeted yesterday. And that's huge, right? Like, you're getting different guys involved into this game, and you make it really hard to defend. That's how you end up with 2 wide open touchdowns. So I think it was great for Ben to get the rookies involved, because you drafted them with high draft picks. You expected the most out of them, and you finally gave them a chance to perform. And I feel like those guys really showed out. I know Colston, obviously, he had that hip injury that kind of kept him out for the rest of the game. We don't have an update on Colston. We'll probably learn more this afternoon when we meet with Ben Johnson. But when he when he was out there, you saw why he was a first-round draft pick for the Bears.
Yeah, I'm glad you picked the rookies here, because I was almost going to go with them as my number 3. So I'm glad that we didn't have to repeat each other here. But absolutely, I mean, I know the numbers. I mean, Burden 3 catches, Loveland 1, but then he got the hip injury. So, but to me, and I wrote it in for Shaw that they were unleashed. That's what that's why they were drafted as high as they were. It's that simple. And Loveland too, on the 1 catch, or after he catches it, he's lowering the shoulder and boom, and let's go. He looks the part. He is the part. So I just want to see more of him. I want to see more of Luther Burden, my pick for Bears Rookie of the Year. every time he's touched the ball, unless I'm missing some plays, going back to the preseason, he's looked good. He looks like a dude, and he plays like a dude. So I want to see more of him. But again, when you got so many different guys who want the ball, I knew this was going to be a problem. But hopefully it's not a good. Hopefully it's a good problem. There's so many guys who are good here. This is a great stable of receivers with the tight ends and the receivers combined. That how you going to get, you're not going to have like 3 guys with 8 or more catches every game. You're just not, but they're good enough. I want to see more of Rome. I want to see more of DJ. I want to see more of Loveland. I want to see more of Burden. Those guys are players. And to see those guys, we saw a glimpse. I think there's a lot more there, but it's certainly exciting when you think back, oh my gosh, to the stable of receivers they've had in the past. And any Bears fan older than 15 knows what I'm talking about. Yeah. I mean, it's been bad. This is a good group, and I just want to see more. I'm greedy.
Yeah, for sure. You definitely want to see more. And it goes back to the challenge that Ben Johnson had, right? Like when he was asked about the rookies, he said, it's a big week for them. They need to get into competition and they need to show that they can do it. And very clearly, Luther Burden showed in practice this week that he can compete and he was worthy of the targets. And you kind of saw that this week, right? Like it's very clear to me that for Ben Johnson, if you're putting in the work, if you're blocking as a wide receiver, if you're doing the little details right, he's going to reward you with looks in the game. And that's exactly what Luther did. That's exactly what Colston did. Kyle did as well. So it was good to see those guys kind of respond, to that challenge as well and kind of get the opportunity and make the most of their opportunity on Sunday. All right, Joe, some losers. What are some, I know we're all happy here and all that sort of stuff, but it wasn't a perfect game. So what are some of your losers?
These will probably be the losers most weeks. I'll start with the run game. Still not there. They gave the ball to Monungai Moore. You mentioned his numbers. He played pretty well other than that play where he kind of got caught up trying to make more yards and he kept getting spun back and trying to break a tackle. And now take that play out. Thought he looked pretty good, but he's not Walter Payton, for crying out loud. DeAndre Swift, I love the screen pass, but they're just still not running the ball more. And you got to run the dang football. I mean, Dallas is running it with Javonte Williams, who was pretty good as a Bronco. But I don't know. Didn't they get him off the scrap heap? I don't even know how they got him. I mean, we got to run the dang ball more. And I want Caleb to throw for 400 every game, and I want to see all the weapons. But you got to run the football, especially against tougher teams, and when you really need to run the football, like in the Minnesota game in the opener, where you got to run the football. Right now, they're 3 games in, 3 bad running games. So the running game.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. I don't think. It's not where you want it to be. And I forget whether it was, I think it was after the first 3, maybe it even got to halftime, but I think they gave Zacchaeus like a run around that kind of picked up a bunch of yards there. But they were at -1 yards for a while there. And I know that, DeAndre Swift dealt with a quad injury all week. He was limited all week. I don't know how much that affected him, but it's even if DeAndre's not there, you should be able to rely on your second and your third team running back. And I don't know. Looking at the tape, I'm halfway through rewatching the game, and there's just a bunch of times where DeAndre's like handed the ball off, and he's met by a couple of guys already in the backfield. So it's kind of like you can't really do much with that, right? Like you can't really. What are you supposed to do in that situation? Maybe you call it better and that sort of stuff. And so it comes down to the running back. Some of his decision making in his routes, I still have question about, but you saw. It's frustrating because you saw in this screen pass how explosive of a player DeAndre can be. Yes. When he gets into space, like he's a playmaker, man. And you just want to, I don't know how you kind of do that with the running game, whether it's, stacking one side more. Maybe you're just pulling an offensive lineman, to where DeAndre's going. But you got to block better for them. And then for the rest of the guys, I thought Kyle – in that second quarter, I think he did a good job picking up a bunch of yards. He had a couple 5-yard runs, 6-yard runs, which was good to see. But I like I like putting DJ Moore in there sometimes, but that can be a running attack. Like your running attack
No.
cannot be DJ Moore back there and just doing runarounds. It can't just be on Olamide Zacchaeus. Like you need to establish a running attack, and it's kind of clear to me that it doesn't work 100% even when DeAndre's healthy, and it's not working when he's injured here too. Like Roschon Johnson very clearly seems to be a special teamer for the staff. Like he's got a no look so far after he's come back from the foot injury. I don't know if he's not 100% and he can do stuff on special teams, but he can't run the ball. But you're not really getting much out of him. And Kyle's, starting to get into a groove there as a rookie in his third game. But you need to figure something out with this running attack because, like we've said earlier, if teams know they are not going to run the ball successfully and you're going to get into, these passing downs, you're going to be a lot easier to defend.
Well, and I don't know if it just gets back to the interior of the line. You should be able to run. You should be able to run. And it also gets back to the draft, and we don't have to go through that again. But there were guys there. They were guys, Cam Scadaboo looked pretty good for the Giants last night. I know the Lions stink. And I'm not saying Cam Scadaboo or someone else like that makes them a Super Bowl contender, but there are guys there. And Shamar Turner dressed yesterday, I heard. Did he play?
He did. He was with the second wave of guys for a couple of those drives.
And Ozzie Trapillo was a healthy scratch. And I got to ask you, not to digress, but I think I saw Darnell Wright at left tackle on one snap, maybe two. Were you, I don't know if that was brought up. I don't know if it was because of an injury situation or what, but was Darnell Wright on the left, playing left tackle for extended snaps?
I don't think I remember that. I remember Darnell got injured and Theo Benedict.
Okay.
From what I remember, I can look at the snap counts and, see where guys were. But I think, Darnell was he got injured late in the second half. He kind of had like an elbow injury. He got back into the game later. But
maybe I just didn't see that right. I don't know. But then I'm thinking, maybe, is that a thing? Remember we talked about way back, months ago. Are they going to move him maybe to don't move him from right tackle? He's good at right tackle. Don't do that. Maybe they're going to do that. Maybe I don't know. That's a conversation for another day. But anyway, they got to run the ball better. Bottom line.
Yeah. Well, you mentioning that kind of goes into my second loser. I think Darnell Wright had a tough game. I think he had a tough game. Yeah. I think he had that holding call that took away a big, I think it was like a 17-yard scramble by Caleb or, to pick up a first down. And I know he got injured later on in the game, but it just, for a top 10 pick a couple years ago, you need that to hit. And yes. I feel like in a big year, in a third year, it's his third year. This is a big year for any, rookie who was drafted in the first round where they got that 5th-year option. Like this is a year when you start thinking about, all right, are we going to pay Darnell? Are we going to give him, some top money, or like, what are we doing with the right tackle spot? And, I think he had a couple penalties again. And I feel like it's been a reoccurring thing for him so far, 3 games into the season. At this point, I don't know what you like. I'm not calling for him to be benched or anything like that, but you need to see better stuff. You need to see better stuff out there. And I don't know whether that's, putting Ozzie in there at a right tackle and then you maybe put Darnell at left, because it's very clear to me that this staff believes that Ozzie is a right tackle. Like they went with what Ryan Poles did. They gave him a shot at the left tackle, and they're like, he's a right tackle. Ben Johnson complimented him on his development. He's looking really good at right tackle right now. So, I don't know whether that's a thing at all, whether it's not, but just to kind of get back to my original point, you need to see more from Darnell right now. Like he's doing too many penalties. He's, he's hurting the team at this point, and he's not playing at a top 10 level that you expected him to 3 years into it. Like his rookie year, he looked good. Last year, he had some moments, but this year so far, I mean, if you're worried about extending him, I would have some hesitation about giving him a lot of money, because I don't know if he's been a net positive for you so far this year.
No, and I want to make it perfectly clear. Like I don't watch game tape on offensive linemen, and I'm watching them throughout the game unless it's obvious. So
sure,
but if he's going to end up being a solid pro, that's not good enough. Again, you drafted him 10th. You passed on, Jalen Carter. I mean, A lot of teams did. I get it, and every team can say, "Well, we passed on that guy." You can second guess, but you need him to be a All-Pro caliber player. Maybe he doesn't make it every year, but he needs to be. If he ends up playing in this league 7, 8, 9 years, and he's a solid player with no Pro Bowl burst, is that a good pick for 10 for the 10th pick? I'd say no. So maybe again, we can be talking about this for the rest of the year, next couple of years. We'll see where this goes, but it's just something to think about. What are they going to do there? And maybe they are saying, not now, not next week against the Raiders or whatever, but Ozzy's going to be the right tackle, and Darnell Wright will figure it out. Maybe it is on the left side. I don't know, but yeah, you also had the ineligible downfield play, and I know that's tricky sometimes for linemen. But it's not good enough. I expect him to be performing at a Pro Bowl caliber player when you're the 10th pick in the draft. And if he's not that guy, it's not on him. It's the guy upstairs. Not God. It's Ryan Poles, the guy who drafted him.
I don't know if we can blame him for
can't blame God.
For the Bears stuff.
It's God's
I don't think
fault.
he would do that.
No. It's not God. It's the man upstairs in the front office at Hallis Hall. That Ryan Poles, that guy.
Yeah, I'll be really interested to see what they do with this bye week here coming up. It's an early bye, and it was very clear to me. We heard from Ben Johnson after we recorded Friday's podcast, and he had some interesting stuff to talk about the offensive line. He talked about how, like I mentioned, Ozzy Trapillo has been developing really well at the right side, and they like what he's been doing so far. And when he was asked about Braxton Jones at the left side, he said he looks good for the first half, but then the second half has not just been what's been desired. And listen, Ben's been clear since the start of training camp, since the end of training camp, that this is an open competition every single week, and they're not afraid to move guys. So I'm really interested to see whether, and we'll get into the preview stuff with the Raiders on Friday, but this will be a big week of practice for the offensive line for Darnell. Is Darnell Wright going to be pushed at all by Ozzy? Like, is Ozzy Trapillo, is Ben Johnson listen, you can't have holding calls. You've had pre-snap penalties. I know that he shouldn't have been called for that holding call against who was against the Vikings a couple weeks ago, that the phantom holding call, but yeah, he's just more of a negative than a positive for you right now as your right tackle, as a former top 10 pick. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if Ben Johnson is like, we've got a competition here this week. I'm putting Ozzy in at right tackle. Darnell, you got to figure it out, whether it's at right, whether it's at left, because Ben's not afraid to challenge guys. And I'm really interested to see, we'll hear more about it from Ben today, but maybe that's the thing. Maybe it's not. But I think over the next couple of weeks, it'll be interesting to see whether there's any shuffling or whether there's any movement at all on this offensive line, because I thought they had a good day. They obviously didn't let Caleb get sacked for the first time in his career. He was hit maybe once. So the offensive line as a whole did a good job. I liked the interior, and Braxton Jones wasn't too much of a problem for me, but you need to shore up both sides, and you didn't see that from Darnell on Sunday.
No, it's unfortunate, but I'll tell you what, if Ben Johnson comes out and says there's a competition at right tackle, or if Ozzy Trapillo gets a surprise start when they play the Raiders or whatever, that's a major story. You know that. So there'd be something, again, it's not like the news of the day, certainly, but it's certainly worth putting on the back burner for now.
Yeah, and I'm not predicting that's going to happen. I'm not here saying that Ben Johnson's going to announce that, but I'm saying that's something to watch for, right? Like, Ben is very clearly, if you're not doing what I want you to do, I'm going to put in someone who is, right? And he was very vocal about his support for Ozzy on Friday, and you haven't seen the performance out there. So it'll be interesting to watch this week, whether there's anything at all, or, heading into the bye week, that'll be good to watch. Any other failures for you, Joe, before we say goodbye?
Well, the pass rush, I know they finally got a sack. Dominic Robinson hadn't had he had a half a sack 2 years ago. His rookie year, I think he had one or two, and they maybe him in the same game. But they hadn't had a sack since the third quarter against Minnesota. So it was good. And then finally Montez got the monkey off the back there. He got a sack in the fourth quarter, but most of the game, no pass rush again. Good for Dennis Allen. I picked on him last week. I'll give him credit this time because the Bears played that bend but don't break. But Dak had a lot of checkdowns. The tight end Ferguson caught 13 passes yesterday. Fine, take that. You'll take that all day. And I know, again, CeeDee Lamb was out. But So the defense, it's funny because the defense with 4 takeaways, great, but I didn't think they dominated by any. To me, that wasn't like old vintage Bears defense at all.
No.
They still Dallas ran the ball well. Their offensive line is pretty good, even without their center. They ran the ball well. Dak still threw for 250-ish.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but I need to see more pressure, more, and it was better. Couldn't have been worse than the previous week against Detroit, but it needs to be better. But at least they got 2 sacks. But I just still need to see more of that and more from the running game for the Bears.
Yeah, you didn't have a pass rush until the fourth quarter when the Cowboys were obviously going to pass, and that's when you finally were able to land on some stuff. And you need to do that in the first quarter. You need to do that in the second.
Yes.
Like I hate picking on him, but like Montez Sweat got his first sack of the season in the fourth quarter of week 3. He's your top paid guy. Like, I'm sorry, but like, I know it's not on one guy, but like when you're getting that kind of money and you're getting, when the team invested in you that much, like you got to be more of a presence. And he had a couple quarterback hits and, he looked better, but I feel like a lot of it happened when you knew that Dallas was going to throw the ball. It didn't happen in the first quarter when you're trying to create some pressure, when it's a 14-14 game. I think the secondary did a lot of carrying of the load on Sunday. And, I feel like that they came up with a lot of big plays when your pass rush didn't really land as much. So that'll be interesting to watch, how much that changes this week. It's not a short week by any means, but it'll be a quick turnaround. And then you have the bye week. And I think that we'll see a lot of evaluations there. But yeah, I agree. And I'll piggyback with that on just my last loser. The run defense is still not good. I mean, Javonte Williams made it look easy. Like, you're lucky that Tyreek Stevenson made a great play on that long run. It seemed like he was going to bully you all day. That run defense needs to get fixed. It's not doing so hot right now. Dallas ran for 121 yards on 20 carries. They're averaging 6 yards a carry. Miles Sanders came in and rushed for 41 yards on 9 carries.
Right.
You need to defend the run better. Like the defensive line as a whole, I feel like needs to play better. You need to stop the run and you need to create any sort of pressure on the quarterback early in the game, so you can kind of dictate the game for your secondary. So yeah, I mean that's a big area still that I feel like needs to be improved on. And if they want to do better, I think we'll need to see that. Matt now chiming in saying his winners were Caleb Tremaine and Tyreek. His losers were the run game, Darnell Wright, and the run defense. CJ chiming in saying that Wright got picked on a lot. Sports Chicago style Canadian Eagle out there swinging at tackle. He's obviously talking about Theo Benedict. He came in for Darnell Wright since Ozzie Trapillo wasn't there. Let's see what else do we got there. CJ saying, I'm curious why they didn't at least explore options of Wright at the left tackle. I was interested about that too. I wonder if that was a situation where you're just like, we know he can't play left tackle, or maybe that was a situation where you're just like, no, we drafted him to be our right tackle at number 10 a couple years ago. We're not moving him. Like, I think the thinking was, let's not create 2 position battles. Let's just create 1. But that might be something that you might have to explore.
Yeah, again, I don't think he's been bad the first 2 years as a Bear, Darnell Wright. I don't think he's been bad.
Wasn't. No.
You can almost say he's been good. Again, I'm not an offensive O-line expert, but I think you could probably say he's been good. But I don't want good to solid. I want a guy you run behind, a guy like you just count on. And I don't know. I feel bad for the kid because he didn't draft himself 10th. Yeah, he would have been a first-round pick even if the Bears passed on. He would have gone on the first round.
Yeah, with that, he was a surefire top 10, top 15 pick.
Absolutely, but he's got to be better. Period.
CJ also saying if you could use a short pass like Brady did to supplement the run, fine, I guess. But if people know you're going to be doing that, I feel like that's kind of going to become easy to defend, right? Like I feel like you got to get some sort of a running attack going. Then CJ last comment here. But if anyone else says anything, not to be a Debbie Downer, but trick plays can't be a normal for this team. A special play here and there, but can't be the norm. I don't know if it was the norm. I don't know if I agree with you there, CJ. I think it's not like they kept doing trick plays and like flea flickers. Like I think they tried one more trick play in the second half, and it kind of just got blown up at the line of scrimmage, and he just kind of dirted it. I think I think that trick play was used perfectly. Dallas
Yeah.
wasn't expecting it. They got momentum after they scored a field goal. You get them. You saw a deficiency in Matty Eberflus's defense, and you picked on it. I think that was a perfect use of it.
Yeah, I don't know if CJ, I don't want to speak for him, but maybe he's thinking to like the reverses, which
Sure.
it's not
Okay.
a
Yeah.
trick
Sure. I
play.
can see that. Yeah.
Not a
Sure.
trick play, but it's, you don't see that like in every other series. And the Bears seem to be using it because they can't get the running game going. So like just pounding it down, through up the middle is not working. So, well, we got to get some yard on each other. We can't just be dropping back and throwing every single play and be too predictable. So let's try a little more of this until we can get this figured out. Unfortunately, they're still figuring it out in week 3 here. But again, this is not a finished product. We knew that going into the season. So you got to do it until you can just give the ball to a running back, whether it's DeAndre Swift or Roshan Johnson or Monungai or anybody who maybe someone they pick up, and pound, where you can get 3.5, 4 yards every single play, because they don't have that now. So then you got to do the reverse. You got to do DJ Moore in the backfield. Like, yeah, I don't want to see that either. And when they're really good, when they're humming, when they are a legit playoff contender, we won't be seeing that.
Yeah, I think you'll see it on rare occasions, but I think it's not going to be the main focal point of your offense, right? I think it'll be a supplemental thing that you do in order to kind of catch the defense off guard. But I feel like that's a good point to kind of leave things off. Obviously, this is a week-to-week league. Everyone's, as you saw in week 3, everyone is still developing. Everyone is still becoming, there's a lot. September has really become like an extension of the preseason. I feel like a lot of these teams are figuring out who they are. So that's why you saw a game like that in Chicago on Sunday, and in Cleveland, in Tampa Bay, like a lot of great finishes, a lot of great stuff. So we'll see what the Bears are able to do this week, but that's everything that we've got for this week's episode, or this episode. Thank you so much to everyone who joined us on the live stream. Appreciate getting everyone's comments, questions. If you like, make sure you like the podcast on the button there. Make sure you like us, hit the like button. And make sure if you're joining us on the podcast, you're like, I want to be part of the conversation. Check out our social medias. We usually post about when we're going to be talking about the Bears. It's usually Monday morning and Friday morning. Sometimes we change it up, but these are the times we'll usually talk. So make sure you check us out on YouTube and join us. We'd love to get your guys' perspective. But Bears are back at it on Sunday against the Raiders. We'll preview that for you guys on Sunday. But until then, we'll talk to you folks down the road.